NFL. Aaron Rodgers was brought to New York to be the Jets' savior. Instead, the Jets have somehow gotten worse as they continue to find new ways to lose week after week. They fired their head coach and GM, and now there's questions about whether Rodgers will be back for the final year of his deal. Here's Aaron on all the noise around the team earlier this week with Pat McAfee.
There's a lot of people talking about the game now, both non-players, non-former players, and former players who, are trying to stay relevant fame-wise. So the takes and the criticism, I think, are a lot different than they were maybe in the mid-2000s. These experts on TV who nobody remembers what they did in their career, so in order for them to stay relevant, they have to make comments that keep them in the conversation. That wasn't going on in 2008, 2009. That was non-existent. The Sports Center of my youth. Those guys made the highlights so much fun, and that's what they showed on Sports Center. Now it's all talk shows and people whose opinions are so important now, and they believe they're the celebrities now. They're the stars for just being able to talk about sports or give a take about sports. Many of which are unfounded or asinine, as we all know. But that's the environment that we're in now.
Asinine. Interesting word choice. All right, we got a full panel here. Stephen A., I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on what Aaron Rodgers just unleashed on?
Look, hey, ready.
I am incredibly interested. I'm fine with what Aaron Rodgers said. We all know how I feel about it. This year's been awful, but we all know that from over the totality of his career how I feel about Aaron Rodgers. What he said, I found to be very, very interesting because I got news for all former athletes that are on television. That wasn't about me. It wasn't about you. I understand he might have thrown us in there a little bit, but primarily his points were made towards former athletes who are now in the media. Because I got news for you. He can't, the way, I knew he wasn't talking about me when he said this. It wasn't like this back in 2008. Oh, no. I've been this way all my life. I was this way when I was this way when I was a writer for the New York Daily News. I was this way when I was a writer and a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I was this way when I was working for CNN-SI and Fox News and Fox Sports rather before I came to ESPN in 2003. No. This ain't about somebody like me. That man said former players who are trying to keep themselves relevant, et cetera, et cetera. So the real question is to the former players, and I'm not really pointing to you. You two guys are former players, but I mean, you guys are. I mean, Dan is one of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, he makes excuses for every quarterback under the sun. And Jay, I mean, you smooth daddy right there. So you ain't gonna be too vicious. He ain't really talking about y'all, but on behalf of former players. Could y'all tell us how y'all feel about what that man had to say? Because what about us? Okay. What about y'all?
I'll go. He's 100% right. I completely agree with what he said. And if you're offended by it, he's talking to you. I grew up in the same SportsCenter era, so I know exactly what Aaron's talking about. I do think there's a reality to the way that we intake sports has changed. Sports are on these all the time now. So SportsCenter, and when we were growing up, watching highlights was the only way to really watch sports was SportsCenter and seeing what happened. Now we have it exactly in real time. So there's a part of that has changed. And if we as a company or sports coverage didn't evolve, then we would have been stuck. I think the accessibility has changed as well. Like everyone's got a podcast covering the NFL. Everybody knows what a quarterback is looking at. Everybody knows what a quarterback should do with the football. Everybody knows what a defense means to and everyone has an opinion on that. So there is that reality. That's why he is right in some regards or 100% right with what he said. And honestly, Aaron, most of the people that are talking about football weren't Hall of Famers. So a lot of the people that are talking about football on television consistently are doing it because that's their job now and that's their career now, and it's the way for them to make a living because they weren't great enough as a player and made a ton of money where they didn't have to. So there's that reality as well. I think for me, candidly, Stephen A., Molly, J-Mac, MK, like, I'm not offended by it. I don't think that anybody in the world does what I do and does it to the level that I do. So I honestly don't take offense to it. I'm sure some do.
Yeah, no, I don't take offense to it at all. And I look at, you made a great point. SportsCenter, when we were kids, it was the way it was because we needed to consume it that way. I now have a 9-year-old son, and he tells me about plays that happened before he was born because he's on YouTube, he's on every other thing that he can see sports in that realm. So the sports that we're giving people now when it's talk shows is different because people want to know opinions. They want to see film breakdowns and things of that nature. I think what has changed is now players actually coming out and caring. Like, if you're Rodgers, who the hell cares what Jason McCourty had to say about the Jets on TV if I'm playing in that locker room? I don't give a damn what Dan Orlovsky said if I'm Aaron Rodgers on where I should have thrown the ball on this route here or I should have threw it to Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson. Who cares? When I was playing the game, I didn't watch sports television because I didn't want to hear Stephen A. Smith talk about my team, although we were 0-16, so he probably didn't make the rundown of the Cleveland Browns that year. So my thing is for the current players who are actually in the media as well, giving their own takes to currently what's going on in the NFL. Like, this is just what it is. For me, I don't do this because I absolutely need money. I don't care about fame. People most of the times recognize me and call me Devin McCourty and don't know that I'm the other twin. So I don't care about the fame. I do this because I enjoy it. I love going to a game and seeing guys that are now on the rise and being able now to come into a studio and talk about those guys and uplift them. But at the same time, when you're doing this job and someone doesn't play well, you call them out. It's not anything personal of that nature. But I love the platform that now as former players, we have something that we can contribute. For me, playing 13 years in the NFL, winning the Super Bowl. Go ahead, Stephen.
I mean, it's a great point, Jason, about listening to it. I'm not offended by it at all. I do think it's worth parsing out the things that he said. His point that personality-driven programming has overtaken highlights. He's well within his rights to note that, but others are well within their rights to note that he is espousing that opinion on a personality-driven program that employs him as a personality during the NFL season. That context does matter here. The other context that matters is I think there's some subtext that he is saying some of the criticism perhaps of his play this year might have been unfounded. Again, he is totally well within his rights to note that, but a lot of the criticism this year is substantiated because of his play. And I guess that's why I come away from this feeling like there is a lot of validity to this message, but it does seem like the wrong messenger at this moment.
Fair. Let me help all of y'all out. Put everybody on the screen so I can see everybody. Let me help y'all out a little bit here, okay? Because, I'm the old school dude. I am 57, you know what I'm saying? I know I don't look it, but I am 57 years of age, all right? So I've been around for a while, all right? And think about the world that we live in, and I don't think he takes that into consideration as well. Yes, we can bring up the point that if Aaron Rodgers was winning instead of losing this year, and he wasn't on pace to have the worst season of his career, maybe he would have articulated a bit different message. Yes, that's obvious, and I think we all see that. And the point that you made was incredibly valid from the standpoint that he's a personality, not just a football player, but a personality, because if you weren't a personality, Pat McAfee wouldn't have you on his show. Why would he do that if you didn't resonate, okay? You have that kind of personality. You even though you're a future Hall of Famer, your personality has a lot to do with you being on the airwaves in that role, because if you weren't interesting and compelling, it wouldn't sell. But we also have to take into account that football and the world of sports itself ain't the only place where it's happening. The industry has transitioned. I was just talking to Mina, Molly, Jay, Dio off the air. And I pointed out how when you look at the average salary, the average median salary in the United States of America is below $50,000. If you're making $50,000 to $75,000, it's considered slightly above average and that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? You can get a job. You can work on YouTube and make over $100,000 a year easily. Why do you think everybody has a damn podcast? Why do you think there's been an addiction to podcasting and what have you? Because people don't want to go to 9 to 5. They don't want to punch a clock. They don't want to get stuck in rush hour traffic. They don't want to use public transportation. They don't want to do all these things. I get to be at home talking. And think about this. You don't have to go into the locker rooms. You don't have to talk to the people you talk about. You don't have to be accountable. See, I get to sit up here and point that out because my entire career, I've had to be accountable. I've had to literally walk in the locker rooms, in press boxes, in stadiums, in arenas, and whatever. And I had to be face-to-face with the people that I actually talked about, which is why on a platform like this, I never hesitate to allow people to come on. That's why when people talk smack, I go like this, airways are right here. You're free to come because I want to let them know I ain't running. Most people out there, no matter what they say, they are running. They're not in front of the people. They don't have to be accountable for anything. What Aaron Rodgers alluded to is basically this. It's the world. It's all changed. It's not football. It's not basketball. It's not some isolated bubble. It's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, everywhere. I just came back, as you pointed out, Molly. I was just in Abu Dhabi last week, you know. These folks out there got YouTube. They see stuff on YouTube. Now, some of it they can, some stuff they can see, some stuff they can. In Dubai, you can see a lot more, stuff like that. But they watch YouTube. And that's just the way that it is. You got people here complaining about the world that we're living in. My problem is when they try to compartmentalize and act like it's here and it's not here. It's everywhere, in every industry, in every walk of life. That is the advancement of technology. And 10 years from now, we'll be complaining about AI and what's that doing, how somebody can mimic you, your face, your voice, you know, and make people think and believe it was you that said something and you had nothing to do with it, okay? And you got to protect your own IP and all of this other stuff. You got to deal with all of that. All of that's coming down the pike. That's the world we're living in. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers, he was right to complain about it, to point it out, but it's a reality he better come to accept. It ain't going anywhere, especially when you've been playing the way he's played this year.